The Twiligans echo the village of Elmsworth sat beneath a permanent haze, where twilight clung to the skies like a lover refusing to part. For the townsfolk, it was always neither day nor night, a time when shadows grew long and whispers carried unnaturally far. They called it the Twiligen. No one remembered when it began, only that it had always been there, a strange and eerie middle ground between light and dark. Liora leaned against the crooked oak that marked the edge of the forest. Her fingers played absent-mindedly with the pendant around her neck, a crescent moon carved from black obsidian. It was the only thing her mother had left her before disappearing into the Twiligen 20 years ago. Now, at 17, Liora felt the pull of the unknown growing stronger. She had heard the stories, of course, how the Twiligen was a gateway to another realm, how those who entered never returned the same, if they returned at all. "You're going again, aren't you?" a voice broke her reverie. It was Callan, her best friend and perhaps the only person who understood her obsession. His sandy hair caught the dim light, giving him an almost ghostly appearance. He carried a satchel slung over one shoulder, its contents jingling softly as he approached. Liora smiled faintly. "You know I have to. It's calling me." "The Twiligen calls to everyone," Callan replied, a note of worry in his voice. "That doesn't mean you have to listen. But what if she's still out there? What if I can find her?" Ilara's voice cracked slightly, betraying the fragile hope she clung to. "You don't understand, Callan. This might be my only chance." Callan sighed, running a hand through his hair. He had heard this argument before and knew there was no stopping her once she made up her mind. Instead, he reached into his satchel and pulled out a small glass vial filled with a swirling, silvery liquid. "Take this, then," he said, pressing it into her hand. "It's moon water. It'll protect you, or so they say." Liora looked at him, her eyes wide with gratitude. "Thank you, Callan. I don't know what I'd do without you." "Probably get yourself killed," he muttered, though there was a hint of a smile on his lips. "Just promise me you'll come back. No matter what you find in there." She nodded solemnly, tucking the vial into the pocket of her cloak. Together, they turned to face the forest, where the trees seemed to twist and sway in an unseen wind. The air grew colder as they stepped beneath the canopy, the faint glow of the Twiligen casting everything in an ethereal light. The deeper they went, the stranger the forest became. The trees no longer looked like trees, but like frozen shadows, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The ground beneath their feet seemed to hum faintly, a low vibration that resonated in their bones. "Do you hear that?" Liora whispered, her voice barely audible over the eerie silence. Callan nodded, his hand instinctively moving to the hilt of the dagger at his belt. "It's the echo. My father used to talk about it. Said it's the voice of the Twiligen itself, trying to lure you deeper. What happens if you follow it? You don't come back." Liora shivered but pressed on, her grip tightening around her pendant. The echo grew louder, a haunting melody that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. It was beautiful and terrifying, a siren song that tugged at her very soul. And then she saw it, a figure standing in the distance, bathed in the silvery glow of the Twiligen. It was a woman, her hair flowing like liquid night, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Ilara's breath caught in her throat as recognition hit her like a thunderclap. "Mother." The woman turned slowly, her expression unreadable. She raised a hand, beckoning Liora forward. Callan grabbed her arm, his grip firm. "Liora, don't," he hissed. "It's not her. It can't be." But Liora couldn't hear him. The pull was too strong, the hope too blinding. She took a step forward, then another, her feet moving of their own accord. "Liora." Callan's voice was distant now, drowned out by the echo. He drew his dagger and followed, his heart pounding in his chest. The figure of her mother receded into the mist, leading them deeper into the Twiligen. And as the shadows closed in around them, Liora couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap, one they might never escape. New Chapter 2. The wind howled through the dark forest, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and the promise of an unknown adventure. Beneath the thick canopy of ancient trees, the path was barely visible, but the trio of travelers moved onward, their steps sure and their resolve unshaken. It had been a day since the last chapter of their journey had unfolded, a journey that had begun long ago, when they first discovered the truth about the Twiligen. A forgotten race of beings, living on the edge of reality and legend, the Twiligen were creatures who could shift between worlds, some of light, others of shadow. It was a secret hidden from most, known only to those who had been chosen. Kara, the young mage, felt the weight of that knowledge pressing against her chest. Her fingers tingled with the power she had only just begun to understand. The magical mark on her forearm, glowing faintly, was a sign of her connection to the Twiligen and their enigmatic world. Alongside her were two companions, Liora, a skilled warrior with a past as shadowed as the forest around them, and Elias, a scholar whose endless curiosity had led them all here. They had come to find the portal, the gateway to the Twiligen's world, hidden somewhere deep within the forest. The key to unlocking the next chapter in their journey. Liora led the way, her sword at the ready, every sense alert. She was no stranger to danger, and this forest, with its murmurs and eerie stillness, felt like an enemy watching them from every shadow. Elias walked just behind her, his eyes scanning the surroundings, occasionally glancing down at the ancient map that had guided them this far. "We're close," he muttered, more to himself than to the others. "How do you know?" Kara asked, her voice low. "Because," Elias said, folding the map and tucking it into his satchel, "the trees are beginning to change. They are bending, like they're guiding us towards something." Liora paused, her keen senses catching something in the air. "He's right," she said, squinting through the dim light. "The forest feels different. Almost alive." As if to prove her point, a gust of wind swept through the trees, and in the distance, the faint sound of chanting echoed in the night. The three of them stopped, eyes wide. The voice was distant, yet it carried with a power that sent shivers down their spines. "What is that?" Kara asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Not sure," Elias replied, his scholarly curiosity piqued. "But I think it's calling us." They pressed on, driven by an unspoken agreement. There was no turning back now. They had come too far, learned too much, and seen too many wonders to retreat. As they neared the source of the sound, the forest began to open up, revealing a hidden clearing bathed in an otherworldly glow. In the center stood an ancient stone archway, its surface covered in intricate carvings that seemed to pulse with energy. "The portal," Kara breathed, feeling the mark on her arm hum with anticipation. She stepped forward, but Liora grabbed her arm. "Wait. There's something wrong," Liora warned, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the clearing. "This place, it feels like a trap." Before Kara could respond, the chanting grew louder, and a figure appeared in the shadows. It was tall, its features obscured by a flowing black cloak, but its eyes gleamed like molten silver. The figure stepped into the clearing, its presence radiating power. "Who are you?" Kara demanded, though her voice trembled slightly. The figure tilted its head, a slight smile playing at the corners of its lips. "Ah, the chosen ones," it said, its voice like a whisper on the wind. "How long I've waited for you." Elias stepped forward cautiously. "You know us?" "Of course," the figure replied, its eyes narrowing with something akin to amusement. "I have watched you since the beginning. You are the key to the next chapter. But not all keys open the door they think they will." The words struck Kara like a blow to the chest. "What do you mean?" "We're here to find the portal. We need to get to the Twiligen." The figure laughed, a sound that echoed through the trees. "The Twiligen are not merely a place," it said cryptically. They are a choice. A transformation. You think you know what you seek, but there is far more at stake than you realize. Suddenly, the air around them thickened, and the trees began to writhe as though alive. The stone archway shimmered, flickering between worlds. Kara felt a pull in her chest, a tugging sensation that urged her to step closer, but the figure raised a hand to stop her. If you truly wish to pass through, the figure said, its tone darkening, you must first answer a question. A question that will determine if you are worthy of the Twiligen's power. Kara swallowed hard. What is the question? The figure's smile widened. Are you willing to sacrifice everything to change the fate of your world? The question hung in the air, heavy and laden with meaning. Kara glanced at Liora and Elias. They had come so far, faced so many dangers, and learned so much. But this was different. This was a choice that could alter the very fabric of their lives. Kara's heart pounded in her chest. The question was simple, yet impossible to answer. She wanted to save her world, to uncover the truth of the Twiligen, but at what cost? Think carefully, the figure warned, its voice cold and distant. The next chapter of your journey begins now, but only if you are willing to pay the price. Kara stood there, staring at the figure, the archway, and the unknown that lay beyond. Her mind raced, but deep down, she knew one thing: no matter what choice she made, there would be no turning back. The figure's molten silver eyes never wavered from Kara, as though it could see every thought and hesitation flickering across her mind. The air around them crackled with magic, thick and heavy, like a storm waiting to break. Kara's heart hammered in her chest, her pulse racing, the question hung like a dark cloud. Are you willing to sacrifice everything to change the fate of your world? She glanced at Liora and Elias, both of whom had their gazes fixed on her. Lyra's expression was unreadable, but Elias looked uncertain, his usual calm demeanor faltering. Kara's throat tightened. Could she really risk everything? Her world, her people, her life, all of it had been in turmoil ever since she had discovered the truth of the Twiligen, and every step she had taken seemed to lead her deeper into a labyrinth of choices she hadn't been prepared for. What did everything mean? The weight of it seemed unbearable. The figure, sensing her internal struggle, tilted its head slightly, its smile never faltering. Time is short, it said, its voice smooth like oil. Choose wisely. The portal will not wait forever. The trees surrounding them creaked, as if urging Kara to make her decision. She could feel the pulsing energy of the stone archway, beckoning her closer with every passing moment. There was no going back now. It felt like the world itself was holding its breath. Kara's eyes flicked to Liora, who stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. Whatever choice you make, Kara, Liora said softly, you're not alone. We're in this together. We've faced darkness before. We'll face it again. Elias nodded in agreement. But the Twiligen aren't just a myth. If we can unlock their power, if we can harness it, maybe we can change things. For all of us. His voice was filled with hope, but there was a shadow of doubt in his eyes. Kara's gaze returned to the figure, whose eyes now gleamed with an unsettling intensity. Answer, the figure demanded, its voice like a whip. A cool wind swept through the clearing, and with it came a vision. Kara saw the land she loved, the people she swore to protect, torn apart by war and suffering. The kingdom, once thriving, now crumbled beneath the weight of corruption and magic gone awry. She saw cities burning, rivers running dry, and the faces of her family, their eyes filled with despair. And then, there was the Twiligen, the key. A race that could heal the rift between worlds, bridge the divide between light and shadow, and restore balance. But only if the right person stepped through the portal. Kara's heart clenched. The stakes were unimaginable. Could she really change the fate of the world? Was she ready to sacrifice everything, her friends, her family, her very identity, for a future that might not even be hers? I can't decide alone, she said at last, her voice shaking. I don't know what this will cost. The figure's smile widened, but it did not speak. It simply waited. Liora, ever the steady one, stepped beside Kara. You don't have to decide alone, she said firmly. We're with you. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. Elias stepped up too, placing a hand on Kara's other shoulder. You're not alone in this. The world is already changing, with or without the Twiligen. But if we have a chance to set things right, then we take it. All of us. Kara took a deep breath, feeling the power of her companion's support flood through her. She had never been one for grand decisions. She had always been a seeker, a learner. But this was something different. This was about saving the world, not just her own life. And for that, she couldn't stand back. I'm ready, she said finally, her voice steadying. We all are. The figure nodded, its eyes glowing brighter. Very well, it said. The price must be paid. With a swift motion, the figure raised its hand, and the air around them seemed to warp. The stone archway shimmered, and the space within it pulsed with an intense light, flickering between worlds. The power of the Twiligen flowed through the air, so tangible Kara could almost reach out and touch it, and then, something strange happened. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble, as if something ancient and powerful was waking. The trees around them groaned in protest, and the wind howled louder. Watch out! Elias shouted, pulling Kara back. But it was too late. The ground split open, a jagged crack running through the clearing, sending shards of stone and earth flying into the air. From the crack, a surge of dark energy burst forth, swirling and coiling like a serpent. The force of it knocked all three of them back, sending them sprawling to the ground. The figure laughed, its voice booming through the chaos. You think you can control the Twiligen? You are but children playing at power. It raised its arms, and the dark energy surged toward them. Kara felt the pull of the magic, a cold, suffocating presence that pressed against her chest. Her mark flared with a brilliant light, and the power within her surged to meet the encroaching darkness. Her heart raced as she struggled to maintain control. We're not children, Kara shouted, her voice rising above the storm. We're the ones who will save this world. With a cry, Kara raised her hand, calling upon the magic within her. The mark on her arm burned with a fierce light, and she felt the energies of the Twiligen gathering around her. Liora and Elias, gathering their strength, stood beside her. Together, they formed a barrier, pushing against the dark power that threatened to consume them. The figure's smile faltered for a brief moment, before it sneered. You are playing with forces beyond your comprehension. But very well. If you wish to walk the path of the Twiligen, then you shall. The energy pulsed one final time and then, with a deafening roar, the dark power collapsed in on itself, vanishing into the ether. Kara gasped for breath, her knees weak, but the archway was still there, gleaming in the distance. The figure had gone. For a moment, there was only silence, and then the ground stopped shaking. Kara looked at her companions. Their faces were ashen, but their eyes burned with determination. The next chapter, Kara whispered, her voice filled with awe. It's begun. And before them, the portal flickered once more, opening wide. They had stepped through the gateway into the unknown. Whatever lay ahead, there would be no turning back. The air beyond the portal was thick and warm, yet there was something unsettling about it, a weightlessness, as though gravity itself had been altered. Kara blinked against the sudden shift in reality. The light here was unlike anything she had seen before, soft but unyielding, casting long, shimmering shadows on the ground. The world around them was both alien and beautiful, a place where the boundaries between the physical and the magical seemed to blur. They had stepped into the realm of the Twiligen. Lyra's hand instinctively went to the hilt of her sword, her gaze sweeping the unfamiliar landscape. The ground beneath them seemed to hum, like a heartbeat echoing through the earth, and the trees, tall, slender, and crowned with leaves that shimmered in silvery hues, reached upward in impossible shapes. Above, the sky was an ever-changing tapestry of colors, as if the very heavens were in motion. Elias, his eyes wide with wonder, took a cautious step forward. "This is extraordinary," he breathed. His scholar's mind was already racing, analyzing every detail. "This is the realm of the Twiligen," Kara whispered, feeling the hum of power reverberate through her. Her mark flared once again, pulsing with an energy that seemed to resonate with the world around them. It was as though the land itself recognized her, acknowledged her presence. "But what did that mean? We're not alone," Liora said suddenly, her hand tightening around her sword as she scanned the shadows between the trees. Her eyes flicked to Kara. "Something's watching us." Kara felt it too, a subtle, almost imperceptible sensation that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. The forest wasn't just alive, it was aware. Watching. Judging. Before they could react, a soft sound broke the silence. It was a whisper on the wind, too soft at first to understand, but gradually growing louder. "Seek the heart of the forest." The voice was distant but clear, reverberating through the air, as though it came from the trees themselves. Kara's heart skipped a beat. The heart of the forest, the words were familiar to her, though she couldn't quite place them. "I heard it too," Elias said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It came from the trees." "Do you think it's a message?" Kara asked, uncertainty creeping into her voice. Liora frowned. "Could be a trap." But Kara couldn't ignore the pull she felt within her, deep in her chest. The magic here, the power, was undeniable. The Twiligen, these ancient, shadowed beings, were not just a part of legend. They were real. They had power, and it was clear they wanted something from her. Something she had yet to understand. "We should go," Kara said, her voice firm despite the unease twisting in her stomach. "The heart of the forest, it might be the key to everything. We don't have time to waste." Liora hesitated for only a moment, then nodded. "Lead the way." They moved forward, the air growing thicker as they walked deeper into the realm. Every step felt like crossing a threshold between worlds, like they were leaving one reality behind and entering another, more dangerous one. The forest pressed in around them, its towering trees forming a canopy that filtered the light, casting deep shadows at their feet. As they walked, the whispers continued, growing louder with each step. They seemed to come from the trees, the wind, the very ground beneath their feet. The voice was always the same, cryptic and insistent. "Seek the heart of the forest." Hours passed, though it was hard to tell time in this strange place. The air didn't seem to change. The light didn't grow dimmer or brighter. It was as though time itself had become fluid, suspended in the space between worlds. Then, without warning, the forest began to shift. The trees around them parted, forming an open clearing at the center of which stood a massive tree, far larger and more ancient than any they had seen before. Its trunk was gnarled and twisted, its bark a deep shade of violet that pulsed with a faint, rhythmic glow. The leaves on its branches shimmered like stars, casting a soft, ethereal light onto the ground below. Kara felt the pull in her chest again, stronger now. This was it, the heart of the forest. The source of the magic that flowed through the land of the Twiligen. "This is it," Kara whispered, her voice filled with awe. The three of them stood in the clearing, facing the immense tree. There was a quiet power here, a profound stillness, and yet Kara couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. The air seemed to vibrate with an unseen energy, and the whispers from the trees had stopped, replaced by an overwhelming silence. Liora stepped forward first, her sword raised in a defensive posture. "Something's not right." Elias hesitated but nodded. "It feels alive." Kara approached cautiously, her heart pounding as she stepped closer to the base of the ancient tree. As she drew near, she could feel the magic pulsing through the air, a tangible force that thrummed in her veins. The mark on her arm flared once again, glowing brightly as though it was drawing energy from the tree itself. A voice echoed in her mind, low and deep, a voice that felt as though it came from the very roots of the earth. You have come to seek the power of the Twiligen. But first, you must understand the price. Kara's breath caught in her throat. It was the same voice she had heard earlier, the one that had whispered seek the heart of the forest. But now it was speaking directly to her, to all of them, price. Kara said aloud, her voice shaking. What do you mean, the price? The tree seemed to groan, its branches creaking as if it was alive, listening. A soft, silver light emanated from the trunk, coalescing into a shape, a figure made of the same shimmering light, standing tall before them. It was humanoid, but not human. Its form was ethereal, like a creature made of starlight and shadows. Its face was obscured by a hood, but its eyes shone with the same molten silver light that had haunted Kara's dreams. The Twiligen are not mere beings, the figure said, its voice like the wind through the leaves. We are a reflection of all that is, and all that could be. You wish to wield our power, but to do so is not without consequence. Magic is not without its cost. Kara swallowed, her mind racing. What is the cost? The figure's eyes flickered with something akin to sadness. The cost is your soul. The words hit Kara like a physical blow. Her knees threatened to buckle beneath her, but she managed to steady herself. My soul, she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. Yes, the figure said softly. You seek to reshape the world, to alter fate itself. But such power demands a sacrifice. The Twiligen are born of both light and shadow, and to wield our power is to become both. To bind yourself to us is to embrace both the beauty and the darkness that lies within. You will never be the same. Kara's thoughts swirled. The price was more than she could have ever imagined. It was not just her life at stake. It was her very essence, her soul. Is there another way? Elias asked, his voice tight with uncertainty. Can we unlock the power without giving up ourselves? The figure shook its head slowly. There is no other way. This is the way of the Twiligen. The cost of power is always high, but without it, you cannot save your world. Kara closed her eyes, her heart racing. There was no going back now. The fate of everything, her world, her people, the balance between light and shadow, rested on the decision she was about to make. The question lingered in her mind. How much was she willing to sacrifice for a chance to change the world? And the answer was as clear as it was terrifying. She was willing to give everything.